You know, one of the pure joys of being a product manager is to be challenged to move a metric, to have no idea how to do it, to struggle to figure out how to do it, and then actually watch it move. I'm sure any PM who spent any time working in any organization has actually gone through this kind of an experience. It could be a core business metric, you could move it using user experience or a new piece of technology, right? It could be as simple as moving the number of registrations on a page, or it could be something much more complex, like say increasing the size of a customer's checkout basket, right? So as a new PM, my first instinct would be to start thinking about this goal metric, something that I call the output metric, and then I would immediately jump into solutions. However, I learned that there is actually a better way to do it. And this learning came over a period of 8 years as I struggled sometimes to meet my objectives and sometimes I failed it, right? Now my preferred approach is to instead pause and identify what are the input metrics that I need to focus on that will actually produce the desired change that I want, right?
So let us first understand what an input metric is and how it is different from these output or goal metric and why they're important. So like I mentioned, an output metric is a core metric of it. It is the most important part of your goal statement, right? It's typically written as change metric XX from AA to BB. However, typically such metrics are not in your hands or in the hands of your team to directly influence. That is because for such metrics to change, it typically needs some third party that you do not directly control, such as your customers or your users, to change their behavior. Input metrics, on the other hand, are something that you and your team can directly and quickly influence. Is that still confusing? Okay, fine. Let us understand this with an example. Say you are looking to increase the number of customers who register on your webpage, right? And you want to track it using a metric called number of customers registered per week, right? Now, like I mentioned earlier, the customer is actually not a part of your organization, right? So you cannot legitimately sit next to every customer and ask him to register. I assume that's not possible. However, you may have also noticed that whenever the latency of the page is quite low, say less than 5 milliseconds, right? Far more customers tend to register. Or it could be that if you do more number of marketing campaign, then more number of people visit your page, and as a result, more of them convert into a registered customer, correct? Now, the number of marketing messages sent and the latency of the page is something that you directly do control, and therefore they become like an input metric, right? So these metrics, like I mentioned, these input metrics are directly correlated to your output metrics, but have the added advantage of actually being in your control, right? Now, of course, for any important and high-level output metric, there could be a really large number of input metrics, right? And the trick is to not drown in them. Focus your efforts typically on the top 5 input metrics that have the highest correlation to your output metric, and that should be good enough.
Well, the interesting thing is that this approach can be applied to a non-technical problem also. Let's take another example. Suppose you are responsible for improving the total amount of sales generated by your sales team, right? Now, for this problem, what are the immediate input metrics? They could be one, the number of salespeople actually you have on your rolls, and two, their conversion success at visiting a prospect, right? Now, the second part can itself be broken down into its own input metrics, right? So, for example, the number of prospects I convert could depend on one, the number of prospects I actually have, and two, the number of prospects I actually visit every day. Therefore, the number of visits I make every day is another controllable input metric. You could also think of my conversion success as having its own input metric. For example, you may have observed that a well-trained salesperson is able to convert 30% better than a person who's not well-trained, right? In which case, training coverage becomes another input metric that you should be tracking, right? So you see that you might start with an output metric and identify only two close by input metrics, but those metrics might in turn have their own input metrics. Your objective, like I said before, is to identify the 5 top controllable, measurable levers and ensure that you focus on them. Set goals at the input metric levels that you feel confident will achieve your output metric. And if your input metrics are trending in the right direction, rest assured you will meet your output goals also. Great. So just one last thing. It sometimes happens that we identify which are the controllable levers that we want to pull, and we start working on them. Those levers are actually trending in the right direction. However, the output metric, which is our main goal, is either not moving at all or is moving way too slowly, right? What happens then? Where did we go wrong? Whenever something like this has happened to me, it is usually because I have left out some crucial input metric. Therefore, the list of metrics that I have that I thought were the ones that were actually going to mostly drive the output metric, I have left something out. So this kind of a phenomenon where the input metrics are trending in the right direction, but the goal is still not being met, is typically a call to action to go and inspect if I have considered every single relevant input metric. And if I have not, consider it, set a goal for it, add it in, and track it. I hope this presentation was useful to you. Do send in your comments, do send in your suggestions. If there are topics that you would like me to cover, please write in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed. Thank you.